I see some folks getting settled. I'm Liz, welcome. If it's okay that I add a little bit of just dialogue while we're getting set up. Let me see.
Liz, this is Boyd Kitchen, and if I can, I'll just start with some of the housekeeping things, and then we'll turn the time right to you. So
awesome, thank you. I wasn't sure if we were going to do that or if I should get everybody set up. So thanks, Boyd.
So one of the housekeeping things is this session is being recorded, and so if you want to remain anonymous, there's some instructions in the chat window that you can use to change your name or to be anonymous. So follow those. If you have any questions, you can send me a chat directly and I'll work with you. Also, we like you to share on social media. So there's some hashtags there that you can share with today, and I think we're pretty close to being ready to go. So let's. If you, I don't think we have any handouts today, Liz. Do you have any handouts to share? You're still muted.
Not during this particular session. I did give one to the organization committee to pass out, and I think it will be available online for download. So there might have been the chance that some people got a chance to look at it ahead, but I do not have one for this specifically, so we can just do the work.
All right, let me just introduce Liz then. She's a certified yoga teacher by day and a recently graduated MPH student by night. Liz is passionate about promoting the benefits of mindfulness and yoga in public health settings and beyond. With over 1,000 hours of teaching experience, Liz is also certified in Yin and SUP, which stands for Stand-Up Paddleboard Yoga. She now teaches and subs in several locations and loves to share the joy of trusting your body both on and off her mat. When she's not studying or doing yoga, you might find Liz reading, preferably on a beach, or at least imagining one. Thanks, Liz. Let's turn it over to you.
Oh man, I love that bio. I forgot that's what I did. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to have you all here with me in our little Yin breakout room session. I am actually at home on a mat. I have a mat behind me and a blanket. If you were hoping to learn a little about Yin, I will be walking you through a little of what Yin yoga is while we're practicing. So feel free to participate to whatever level you're comfortable. If you are in a place where you can sit on a mat, awesome. If you're, doing this at work, that's probably not as easy. Maybe you have a little office and you can shut the door and kind of find a spot, or just sit quietly in your seat. There might be some things that you can still do while you're in your seat at your desk or something along those lines. If you're teleworking and at home and you have the flexibility, I'd love for you to take just a couple of seconds, maybe grab like a blanket that's rolled up or a couch pillow, a book that you might have hanging around, like a thick book that you can use for believe it or not, you can use just about any prop you have around at home for different poses or for part of our practice. So just kind of while you're maybe gathering or getting settled or whatever might be useful to you, I'll go into a little bit of talking, explaining, chatting about Yin yoga and what it is. If you didn't get any of the pamphlets or handouts and you're a little curious, I'm going to start by, I've got a folded up blanket here as well. And again, my mat. So I'm just going to scoot back on my blanket so that I've got a little space to elevate my hips and make a little bit more space in in my seat. It can really be uncomfortable when you're doing a lot of sitting. And so anytime your hips are elevated just a tiny bit or a little bit more above your knees, that can actually help to stabilize the pelvis and make sitting a little less uncomfortable. By way of just a quick introduction to what Yin Yoga is, it was developed a few years back, developed by Sarah Powers and by Paul Grilly, and together they kind of were doing, you know, their own thing in the yoga communities and mindfulness communities, and they really felt that, you know, when you start to enter more of a mindfulness and meditation practice, in Sarah's case, sitting a lot, our bodies aren't prepared for that kind of actual work that is sitting when you're meditating and when you're being more mindful. And for Paul, there was a lot of, you know, disconnect that was happening in the world with a focus, especially in the West, on more of a physical asana practice, and less focus on the subtle, less tangible fluctuations of breath and things that were happening in the body. And so as they kind of developed this practice, it was meant to create a space where more mindfulness could happen in and during a small physical practice, but also to create a ideally better outcome in some ways with the experience that was happening in the body. So Yin is specifically for working with connective tissue. Connective tissue is in our muscle, it's in our joints, it's, you know, what connects the muscle and joints and tendons and everything together. It's in pretty much our whole body, of course. And so when we work with connective tissue, we're allowing stale and stagnant energy to move in and through, to help with detoxification, and again, to be in a place that's a little more mindful and notice again those fluctuations that happen with breathing and a practice when we quiet and we slow down a little. So with that, I'd like to invite, if you haven't come to an easy pose or a seat yet, to find one. You can do this with legs crossed or legs extended out in front of you. Again, I'm going to be teaching mostly to a seated position on my mat, because again, that's kind of where I'm at in terms of teaching today. So adjust that for if you're at your desk. You'll just find a comfortable seat at your desk chair. And from here, we're going to start with a couple fallout breaths. Breath is really pivotal, really important in part of the Yin practice. And so we're going to start by, you can just place your hands, rest them on the knees or thighs. You're welcome to keep eyes softly closed or open, gazing softly in front of you, whatever feels more useful. And we're going to take an out breath together. So just exhaling so the lungs are empty, inhaling in through the nose together. Let's go ahead and find a fallout breath. And this is just a big sigh and exhale out the mouth. Just like it sounds. Inhaling once again through the nose. And a big exhale out the mouth and sigh. We're going to take one more, just like it. Inhaling once again through the nose. And a big exhale, sigh, release out the mouth, let it out. From here, you're welcome to, again, gaze softly in front of you or close eyes. We're going to shift our thoughts now to breath, inhaling through the nose and back out. And maybe to setting just an intention or something that we'd like to connect you to through practice today. So setting that intention for our practice, an invitation in this space to notice where you are at in this moment at this time. So kind of holding that space for both positive and negative experiences, but specifically the opportunity to reflect, to carve out this time in honor of where you're at, what brought you here. Maybe that condenses to a word. Maybe it's a small reflection in your mind. Passing some thoughts or time on those things that have brought you here to this moment. Recognizing in this unique moment, it is a culmination of all these experiences. Just like stepping into a river, we never step into the same place twice. And yet it is that same deep river. Aware of your breath as it continues to travel through the nose and back out. Maybe your eyes, if they're still closed, we'll begin to close this mindfulness intention setting by eventually bringing the hands into the heart. The thumbs maybe gently pressed towards the chest and the palms against each other enough just to send the elbows to the sides just a bit. As if we're trying to hold right now in this space those thoughts or experiences or feelings here for another moment. And then opening the eyes when and as you're ready with those palms together at heart. Let's feel free from here to go ahead and inhale the palms out wide and up. So we're going to do a little bit of gathering breath here all the way out and overhead, a little bit of a salute, and then exhale, pull the hands all the way back down into heart on that out breath. And let's take that just a couple more times. Inhaling out and up and overhead, exhaling hands down at heart. Last one, we'll inhale out and up and overhead. Exhale, bring hands all the way back down into heart. We'll leave them there for just a moment. Again, wherever you're at, in your seat, in your chair, maybe noticing the spine stack gently out over the hips, the shoulders as well. And then moving with an exhale, let's go ahead and release the fingertips and palms, set them back down. And we're just going to add a bit of small movement here, rolling through the shoulders, maybe through the upper body and neck a little bit, maybe wiggling around in the seat, whatever that looks like for you. If you've been rolling your shoulders backwards, I'm going to invite you to roll them forward so you're shifting a little bit more. And then making your way back into a settled seat for a moment, we'll start a couple of poses or practices to add on with the breath. Taking the right hand over to the left shoulder, let's bring the gaze over the left shoulder as well. Allow that hand to just grip the shoulder enough that the right shoulder might be able to drop so that we're opening into the neck and to the upper body on another breath. And we're going to continue through our practice to guide the breath through the nose and back out. Take one or two more in-breaths here. Making your way back to center on an inhale. So inhaling, come back to center, bringing your gaze back, dropping that right hand down. Let's go ahead and switch sides. The left hand coming now over to the right shoulder and the gaze out over the right shoulder as well. Breath in through the nose and back out. Always welcome to have your eyes open or closed through practice. If you find them open, gazing softly in front of you. Finishing with an exhale. Inhaling, make your way back to center. Once those hands drop, let's roll and shrug and bounce and move and wiggle everything out again. Circles, shrugs, up and down. Making your way through to your seat once more, placing your hands in your lap or at your knees, again, in a chair or on your mat. We're going to inhale and slide our heart as far forward as feels useful. And then with the hands gripping here, we're going to exhale and round the spine as far back as we can get our back to the back wall or seat or mat. Inhale forward, exhale round. Couple more. Inhale and exhale. Keep going. We'll inhale, excuse me, and exhale. Last one or so. Inhale, slide that heart forward, and exhale. Perfect. When you come back in through to a seat this next time, we're going to lengthen the legs all the way out in front of us. And again, I'll try and adapt as much as I can for what it would look like if you were in a seat or on your mat. So with the legs out in front of us or your legs down on the floor, we're going to inhale and flex the toes. And this can look again like in your seat with your feet on the ground, feet super flexed here. We're going to inhale the palms out and up. So make sure you have enough room to bring the palms all the way overhead. Drop the shoulders just a bit here, and with your palms looking at each other like you've got a ball or a beach ball, something held between the palms. We're going to hinge the heart forward and the hands like we're trying to lower this beach ball all the way down over the lap. Again, whether you're in a chair or on the floor. Once you bring your hands down to your sides or to rest at the top of the legs, feet still flexed or pressed firmly into the mat, we're going to exhale and just lower the chest and chin a tiny bit. So the hands have finally lowered, and we're going to remain here with a flat back, turning this into a deep forward fold. So this is just one of the yin postures that we can explore a little bit, moving into a forward fold, flat back, and just noticing where in your body you might feel this pose or feel any sensation with this pose. We'll take 2 or 3 more breaths here, guiding it in through the nose and back out. Just guiding that breath in through the nose and back out. Last breath or so in this. From wherever your palms are, shifting so that they can look at each other once more, like you're trying to pick that beach ball back up. We're going to inhale the palms back up and overhead, like we're trying to lift it all the way back up. And then exhale the hands overhead and back down into the heart. Notice the feet are still flexed, so we'll go ahead and soften them. And from here, go ahead and soften the fingertips too. Let's just roll through the wrists and ankles, toes, fingertips, kind of bringing that motion as lotion to the joints. Lots of movement. And then making your way back into a seat or into that still pose. Once again, we're going to let the ankles or the fronts of the feet just kind of touch. So rather than flexing, we're going to let them kind of hang soft. So my calves slightly touch a little. My legs are a little bit tripod here. But from here, we're going to move into another forward fold with a bit of a different sensation. We'll start by letting the hands rest on the thighs or at your sides. Chin dropped down to the chest first. And then the more that you start to curl that chin down into chest and bring the chest with it, the more this time your spine rounds out behind you. So rather than the flat back, we're looking for a nice rounded spine, a deep forward fold where the whole thing is just rounding into a little half circle or semicircle here, kind of like you want to fall down into your lap. So think about all of that posture that you've been holding on to, everything you know about posture, and just let it go. We're letting gravity do the work here. All that space between the vertebrae. Our thoughts returning to breath or to that intention we began to start with at the beginning of class. If you've kind of popped in, we're moving into a gentle yin practice that focuses more on fluctuations, on the less tangible, the breath, all of the softer side, you might call it the softer side of a yoga or practice or physical experience here. You've heard the term it's often associated with Chinese medicine, yin and yang. Yang is often considered maybe more of a masculine, sometimes aggressive or assertive, heated type of practice. But if we look at it just in nature, these opposites exist everywhere, right? We have left and right, we have up and down. So not that yin is the opposite of yang necessarily in terms of a yoga practice, but it definitely encapsulates more of the subtle or feminine or cooling postures. So after you've been here for another moment or so, again, this can still be done at the desk, head hanging, shoulders hanging, just really sloppy. Notice You know, if you've kind of fallen into the pose a little longer, or if it feels a little deeper, you've made a little bit more space in your spine for another breath here. And then to come out of this, I'm going to invite you to keep your chin into the chest until the very end. Maybe your hands kind of shift to the side a little, and then we're going to stack the vertebrae in reverse. So this just requires a little bit of engagement through the belly, just allowing the spine to stack all the way up until the chin eventually comes out of the chest. Once the chin comes out of the chest, back in through your seat, check back in, find a breath or two here, and feel free in between any of our movement, any of our postures, to come back to stillness like this, or to add on with some movement or shift. Again, this is going to be your body and your practice, so just moving in any way that will feel the most useful to you. After another breath or so here with that movement or stillness from that forward fold, we're going to come into some hip openers by bringing the right foot with the toes flexed to the ceiling. Again, this can look like being in a chair. Your right foot would stay on the mat. Your left knee, we're going to hug in towards the chest. So if you're in that chair, you might cross the ankle over the front of that right thigh, right? So that you're kind of creating a similar series in your hips. We're going to take the right hand or elbow in front of this left knee and the left fingertips out behind us so that we're twisting out over to the left. Same thing, if you're in your chair and you've got that ankle crossed, you're still going to bring your hands to the outer knee so you can twist the upper body over to the left. Several breaths here in this twist, and just allow yourself to settle into it. So maybe if you are familiar with yoga and you've taken some of these postures, we really sometimes will crank or really, press deeply into the pose. What would it look like instead to hold and to anchor in your roots, in your hips, in your legs, while the shoulders and chest just soften and fold open or fold over. 2 more breaths in through the nose and back out. So just a couple of guiding breaths here still. Making your way back towards the front of your mat, front of your chair, the room on your inhale. We're going to take this left foot to the inner thigh. So again, if you're at your desk or your seat, you'll probably just stay where you're at. The right hand to slide in, the left arm to come out, and give that palm a turn so it's looking at the ceiling. We'll start to slide the right hand forward as the left hand comes out and up. So the whole chest now twisting open towards the left here. So if you're doing this in a chair at your desk, you might slide that hand forward to the knee so that you can give a big twist so that the top hand is reaching up as much as the lower hand is reaching towards the hips. Another breath or so. We're going to exhale and lower this left hand down. Set the chest back up to face the front of the room or your mat or this leg so that everything is lined up or square. And then walk the hands forward as much as feels useful into a forward fold. So if you're at your desk and you've got that leg crossed, you're only going to lean forward as much as opens this outer knee and hip. And you might notice some extension through the back of the right leg here. Anytime you have the opportunity while you're here, soften into the pose. Shift into a place where you can kind of rest or think less about what's happening in all the muscles and they just relax into it or release. Maybe thoughts again returning to that intention or just reflecting on, again, holding space for being here in this moment at this time and on your mat. Last breath or two on this side. We'll begin to move with an inhale, coming up to rise. We're bringing the fingertips back as you stack and come back up to rise. I'm going to invite you to stay here for just a moment. The foot pressed against the thigh, or again, if you're in your chair, it's going to be crossed at your thigh. We're going to take the right hand out behind us. So find something to kind of grip, whether it's the mat or the back of your chair, and just slide the left hand all the way up. Once again, pushing in two different directions. So you've got that left hand reaching and the right hand reaching towards the earth or the chair. Check into this right foot. Find another breath. And we'll move with an exhale and lower this left hand, coming back in through a seat, extending the left leg now to meet the right. And feel free to wiggle and shift and move in your seat, in your chair, on your hips, however that looks, for a breath or two. We'll begin to shift to the opposite side. So next breath, inhale, the left foot will flex, or again, if you're in a seat, it'll press firmly to the floor. We'll hug the right knee into the chest, or it will cross over the left leg, taking this left hand to the front of the knee or the elbow to the front of that right knee. The right fingertips will come out behind you and we'll start to turn the chest over to the right. Check into the sensations in your body here, where you feel this, what you notice. Breath in through your nose and back out. The opportunity always to return to breath or return to intention. Last one. Moving with that inhale, feel free to return to center. And then take your right foot to the inner thigh. So if you're again at your seat, you might just stay crossed here. The left hand to the inside, it might touch the knee or the toes. The right arm out to the side. Give your palm a turn to look at the ceiling and slide your left hand forward as you bring that right arm up and out. This time, once again, this left hand hooking down towards the earth of the knee or the leg as much as the right arm is hooking up towards the sky. Notice where you feel this sensation here in this pose and on this side of your body. Inhales and exhales. Last one or two. Big, strong reach as you're reaching towards the lower part of your body as well. Maybe gazing to the right or the floor to protect your neck. And then using your out breath, begin to lower the right hand down so you can eventually square the shoulders over this left leg. We'll start to walk the hands farther forward, only as much as you find that forward fold for you. Toes again flexed on the left side here, or pressed firmly to the floor or mat. If you'd like to drop your chin to the chest, you could. And breath in through your nose and back out. Slow, deep movements. A lot of yin yoga as well, focusing on the larger muscle groups. And again, designed to focus on those larger muscle groups because that's often where some of that toxicity, some of that stale, stagnant energy, some of the sore muscles, a larger amount of the connective tissue reside. When you're doing fascia work, a lot of the belief in connection there is you can do work on one part of your fascia and it affect another part. It's kind of like webbing or a web-like connection in the body here. So maybe stretching into a forward fold, that neck releases finally, or the pain in your wrists goes away. It doesn't always make sense how it's all connected, but viewing that internal system as a web where it is connected, allowing you that opportunity to relax and release and shift. We'll move with an inhale and begin to stack, coming back up. And then from here, keeping the foot there for a little bit of that activation of the inner thigh, take that left hand out to the side. Whether you're gripping the chair or the floor, the fingertips are probably away from the body. We'll reach through with the right hand up to the ceiling. Once again, as much as we're pressing the left hand down to the earth. So getting that nice big reach again across the chest, across the front body. Breath in through the nose and back out. Last one or so. And then moving with an out breath, go ahead and lower the right hand down. Come back in through a seat. And if you're on your mat, this is where we're going to shift the right foot to the mat, give a little bit of support to the left knee so both feet are on the mat. Hands can come out behind you, and we'll windshield wiper the knees side to side a couple of times. If you're in your chair, you might just have to adapt feet to the floor and kind of windshield wiper or wiggle the knees out. And if you're in your chair, this next pose might not be as easy. I'm going to offer that if you're in a place where nobody's going to watch or think it's kind of funny, to find a seat. If you haven't yet, always feel like you can adapt. The best part of this is nobody's watching, at least on the cameras here. So just feel free to explore in your body and in your practice today. We're going to come back in through this seat. Again, my hips are still elevated on my little blanket, and I've got the soles of the feet that I'm now going to bring together so that we're allowing a little bit more opening towards or to the hips. Fingertips can wrap around the toes or the fronts of the knees or thighs. You're welcome to bounce the knees up and down a couple of times here. Make some space in the hips. Lots of breath through the nose and back out. Inhales and exhales. Another breath or so. If you've got that light bouncing going on, go ahead and rest the knees. And two options here with the soles of the feet together. You can bring the hands out in front of you and start to lean the chest forward a little bit so that you're getting a little more opening through here. Or you could walk the hands out behind you and lift the chest. So you're getting lift or fold. Your body, your practice, so see what's going to be more useful to you. I often find that forward folding like this allows my hips to open deeper, whereas having my hands out behind me and lifting the chest allows kind of that chest and heart space to lift and open deeper. And if you are still in your chair, this might be once again where you just forward fold. You could even place your hands on the desk in front of you and reach forward. Breath in through your nose and back out. Inhales and exhales. And we'll continue to hold that pose for another moment or two. Thoughts to breath, thoughts to intention, thoughts to what's going on in the body. No judgment, just notice, oh, my hip feels funny. Oh, my ankle is doing this. Oh, I feel tired. Our brain wants to make up a lot of story about what's going on in the body, so we're just going to notice what shows up there instead. And then as you're ready, let's start to make our way back into a seat once more. And we'll move the legs once again to come out of this. A couple options here. You might bring the hands to the outer knees, join the soles of the feet back down to the mat. Feel free to windshield wiper again side to side, or maybe you lengthen the legs all the way here and roll and bounce and move and wiggle everything back out. Whatever that looks like for you though, eventually we are going to lengthen the legs all the way out. So if you were windshield wipering, I'm going to invite you to lengthen them once more. We're going to let them kind of hang soft and just add a tiny bit more upper body before we move around a little bit more on the mat. An invitation to bring your hands and arms all the way out in front of you, kind of like Frankenstein arms. And then we're just going to flex. The fingertips are touching. We're going to flex the fingers all the way down towards the shins and then all the way back up to the ceiling. Inhaling and exhaling. So some of what we're practicing today are not exact yin postures, but it's in the same kind of vein, the same more relaxing or centered or slower mindful practice. Some of the poses are exact yin postures and some are adaptations. On your next breath, let's have the hands look at each other. Again, those fingers are closed and we're going to flex them to the outer wrist and then to the inner wrist. And we'll do this a couple of times. Inhaling one, exhaling the other. Once more to either. And then when you come back to center, circle it around one way and circle it around the other. And then bring your elbows all the way into your sides. Squeeze your hands tightly back into fists, just about as tight and squishy as you can bring it in. And then we're going to inhale and start to open the fingertips and expand and uncurl like you're kind of clawing your fingers open. Uncurl until the fingertips stretch all the way open and expand, and then flex once more towards the forearm. And that's just a little bit of a wrist reset here, a circle or two to wrist reset. Now, from here, I'm going to invite you from this seat to come into hands and knees. So same thing, if you're in your at a desk, might be a little more complicated. If you can and have the space, find that little spot on your floor or on a mat, whatever that looks like. What the other thing I love about yin yoga is I've got my mat here on my floor, but I could do almost all of this without one. You could do this anywhere. You can do it in a car. You can do it, again, at your seat, at your desk. There's a lot of flexibility there, meaning we're taking the time to just notice our body and where it's at and what feels useful to it. So some of these postures, there's a lot of adaptability here. There's no exact way to do this other than what feels useful to the body. And the more you trust that process and experience, the more you'll come to find what poses and what works for you. So we're going to make our way into that tabletop where palms are under shoulders and knees are under hips. Fingertips are pretty wide here, so rather than those closed fingers, we're going to open them wide. And we're going to move through what are called cat-cows. So inhaling, the belly will soften a bit as we gaze forward. That's our cow pose. Exhale, we'll press to the palms and knees, lift the spine towards the ceiling as the chin drops towards the chest, like a cat arching its back. I'm going to have you keep taking this several times, inhaling through cow and exhaling through cat. If you're at a desk and you're seated, it would look the same way as when we started seated cat-cows at the beginning, where hands around the knees and we're sliding the chest forward and back. So feel free to adapt this to what's useful to you while you're here today, and make your way through those big flexions in the spine, inhaling and exhaling as you round. Lots of space, one more. Let's go ahead and come back through center or neutral into that center spine. And then we're going to take the knees just the tiniest bit wider, just tiny bit wider, and send the hips back to the heels, palms extended out in front of you, forehead down towards the mat. This is called a child's pose. So once again, more complicated in a desk. If you're at a chair and at a desk, you might be able to place your hands on the desk in front of you and kind of stretch across the desk in a fold like this. Or again, you can do this with your knees or on your knees as you're in a child's pose on your mat. The idea here that the head is just a little bit lower than the heart, and you're getting a little bit of stretch and release across the back body for another inhale and another exhale. On your next inhale, feel free to start to walk the hands all the way out and over to the left. So same thing, at a desk, walk it really far over to the left. Here, walk it as far to the left as you have space for. Maybe gaze down at the floor so you're protecting the neck and shoulder. We're going to hang out for a couple of breaths, bringing all of that weight, all of that hold, again, into the large muscle groups of the hips and out across the shoulder and neck here. Breathing deeply through the nose and back out. Little bit of release to the outer body. Our outer shoulder, down into the flank, into the side, and into the ribs. One more inhale. And then eventually making your way to the opposite side. We'll start to inhale, maybe coming back through the front of the room. Exhale, walk the hands all the way out now and over to the right. Same thing, as far as you can reach those hands out to the side, as far as you can. Space into the outer shoulder, space into the side body, into the hips. Lots of lengthen. Breath in through the nose and back out. And inhaling once again, make your way back through to the front of the room, or hands back to the front of the room. We're going to walk all the way the hands forward until we find our tabletop again. And then when we do, bringing the knees together underneath the body so that you've got a little bit of a tripod of the knees. Palms will stay wide. Let's go ahead and exhale and lower the right hip down towards the mat. Little micro bend in the elbow like we're trying to twist, and then inhale and come up and twist over to the left. We're just going to do that a couple of times. Just swivel as much or as deep as you'd like to take the hips here. Exhale aside, inhale, come up, exhale aside, inhale and come up. Once more to each side. So just long, lean flank stretches here. And then when you make your way back to tabletop this next time, separate the knees, and we're going to move through a small Thunderbolt series. It's called a Thunderbolt series, or a modified one, before moving into some of our next big deep hip openers. And this we'll work this by finding an inhale through tabletop first, an exhale to walk the hands to the knees, and an in-breath to sweep the palms out and up and overhead. So we've got those high knees, salute overhead, and exhale the hands down into heart. Let's go ahead and inhale the palms out and up once again, once more. Exhale, hinge at the hips and fold down like you're coming back into child's pose. Feel free to stay here in child's pose or move through the whole thing with us again. Inhaling back into tabletop. Exhaling, walk the hands to the knees. In-breath, sweep out and up and overhead. And exhale, hands down into heart. In-breath, hands out and up and overhead. Exhale, hinge at the hips and fold down into child's pose. And then we'll find one more here, coming right back into tabletop. Last one. Exhale, hands to knees. An in-breath to sweep out and up. And an exhale, hands to heart. An in-breath, rise out and up and overhead. And an exhale to hinge and fold. Full breath here. And then let's make our way into tabletop, and we're going to make a big adjustment moving into a big hip opener here. So often this pose is called pigeon, if you've ever heard it in like a regular yoga class, depending on what your experience with yoga is. Here in Yin, we call it more of a sleeping swan, and it's a lot less alignment based and a lot more how it feels and how long you'd like to stay there. So from tabletop, I'm going to slide my right knee forward, coming only as far forward as that gives my hip space to open. Because I happen to have my little blanket here, I'm going to fold it. And the two options you have are to bring your elbows to rest so that you're bringing the earth to you for a little more support. Or some folks like to tuck it underneath their hip in the back so that there's more support for the hip here and come down to the elbows. The modification here you might make if you're at your desk is once again to cross that ankle over the thigh, and you're going to forward fold. So that's still going to be a hip opener. If this is a little bit weight bearing for you, my last offering would be to come to your back and hug the knee into your chest. This is where I'm going to stay though for the remainder of this portion of the pose, just for giving you that full experience or sensation of what this yin posture looks like here. Again, a deep hold. You'll notice maybe while you're here in this deeper pose that this is a lot more of the larger muscle groups that we are holding in this space, right? We're moving into the hip flexor, into the top of the quad and down into the hamstring. The importance of that deep hip opener, again, moving those toxins, moving into more of that mindfulness while we're in that space. And the hip flexor, or psoas as well, happens to be a huge point of, it's often called the emotion seat of the body, and a huge point of detoxification. In the hip, there actually are a lot of lymph nodes in and around and underneath that psoas or hip flexor. Lymph nodes that can get a little bit of a release when we hold these poses a little longer. Working with that balance in yoga, The term yoga means to yoke or to bring together. And when we're bringing together that balance of body and mind and spirit through a physical practice or through a breath practice, and bring that balance back into the body, we're often working with again, that contradictory positive and negative, male and female, masculine, feminine, yin yang, whatever you want to call it, experience or natural opposition that occurs in nature and also occurs in our body. So one hip in this particular pose is open and expanded, right? We've got that left leg out behind us and that hip flexor being stretched slightly, whereas this right hip flexor is actually getting some compression or psoas, a muscle just like our other big muscles up here. So it needs that stretching, that strengthening, just like any of our other muscles. And when we sit a lot and stand a lot, it doesn't always get as much love, doesn't always get as much work or activation. So I'm going to invite you to take maybe 2 more breaths on this side. Again, if you're at your desk and you're kind of doing that forward fold thing, or I'm on your back, mindful for that other moment about what your transition might look like to come out of this. And then we'll begin to shift from a big hip opener on the right side here to the left. We've got lots of time. So for me, since I'm on this pillow, or blanket, I'm going to start to inhale and come back up, get my props to the side. When my palms find the mat, I'm going to tuck my back left toe and start to heel toe that knee farther forward so I have space and can eventually slide this right leg back. Now, for this particular series, I'm going to invite you to move right to the opposite side. We're going to slide the left knee forward, and immediately all that compression that we've brought into that right hip is flushed out by walking the right leg out behind us, making some space once again, creating new compression in the left side, and finding the props to support. So for me, that's a blanket where my elbows go. If you're on your back, you'll probably have just switched legs, so the left knee's in the chest. If you're in your seat, you'll cross the opposite ankle. So in this case, probably the left ankle over the right thigh now, leaning forward into it so that it opens into the hip and outer knee, creates that compression again in the hip flexor. Again, those 2 pivotal or most important parts of the pose, the compression and the opening at the same time. What that often does is creates a lot of opportunity for the lymph to open, to flush, to detoxify. If you're unfamiliar with some of that terminology with emotions or emotionality that can get stuck in the body, or stale and stagnant energy, if we think of the word emotion and break it down, maybe you've heard that phrase before, that emotion is just energy in motion. When it gets stuck or trapped in the body or doesn't have the opportunity to discharge fully, it stays or it recirculates. Often can get stuck in that webbing, that fascia. If we consider the effects of trauma, and some of my background is in trauma and in PTSD aspects of yoga and sensitive trauma, PTSD sensitive yoga, and the concept behind it, that emotion, that inability to discharge can get stuck in the nervous system, stuck in the body. So when we give the body an opportunity to slow down and regulate with deep breathing, we're regulating that connection and that opportunity to reset nervous system, or again, discharge that emotional experience or that emotion that's stuck or trapped. Our mind, again, right, it wants to make up a story. It's wanting to understand what's happening in the body, and giving it that opportunity instead to move through rather than resisting all the time, because the brain brain understands that if we're avoiding something but it's not supposed to be scary, then why are we avoiding it? So we're just kind of moving through it with another couple of breaths as we finish this side. Always welcome to gaze forward or drop the chin a little bit here. Whatever allows you to check into neck and shoulders. And then we'll begin to make our way out of this side as well. So a nice big exhale, maybe to conclude or finish up that part of your practice, shifting your props if you're on that full sleeping swan position, shifting the palms back down to the mat. You're welcome to tuck the back right toe. Start to bring the knee further forward so that you can heel toe and then slide that left knee back. Now in this case, because this front has had the compression, if you'd like to alternately tap your toes behind the mat, if you were on your back, you might extend your legs out straight. If you're in your seat, I'm going to invite you to come to a standing pose. So if you were at your desk, again, inviting you to stand so the whole of the hip flexors can unflesh or untuck here. For another breath. And then again, this is where you'll have to adapt a little if you're at your desk, but I'm going to invite you to come all the way down to your belly. So if you're at home or snuck into a little carved spot that you could in your office and you're down on your belly, an invitation again. Once you get here, let's stack the hands, maybe bend the knees and shift the feet from side to side a couple of times. A little bit of a windshield wiper. I do not have an adjustment for you if you are in a seat at your desk. I'm sorry. If you're on your back, once again, hopefully you've got space there on your mat to be able to join us on the belly and just getting that little bit of a windshield wiper, that invitation to open through the front of the hip flexors again. We're going to take another breath or so here, chin resting on the hands or a cheek resting here for another breath. Excuse me. On your next inhale, we're going to go ahead and lower the legs back down. So the front shoelace side of the foot and the front side of the thighs, everything on the front part of the legs is touching the mat. You're welcome to stay here and just rest your chin on your hands if that feels more useful, because you might notice there's probably a little bit of compression or something going on in the back of the neck there. You're welcome again, stay here or slide up onto your elbows. Create a little bit of a 90-degree angle here. So the elbows are under the shoulders, palms extended or fists, whatever feels more useful to you. And then from here, we're going to just gently push into the elbows, the tiniest bit, so that the shoulders get some lift here. So check in once again, the subtlety, what's going on in the body and where. Typically, there's a little bit of compression that you might notice or feel some type of sensation in your low back, hips, sometimes around the belly or heart or shoulders. For you, just notice where that might be. With that gentle press, you're welcome to continue your gaze forward, or feel free to drop your chin down into your chest and make some space across the back of the neck and shoulders. We're going to take several breaths here. So if you hear some shuffling or some shifting on my mat, that's kind of the sound you might hear while you're in that. But I'm going to invite you to stay once again in that space, in that yin pose, in that place where your elbows are just underneath the shoulders, giving you that little bit of opening across the back of the neck, and especially across the psoas and into the front of the body here. Continue that breath, inhales and exhales. And this is another one of those postures that we're going to keep for several moments. The opportunity here to again open through the front of the hip flexors to bring that compression, because remember, we're playing with that space where we're opening, closing, shifting. Compression and release. Sometimes those muscles, there's a process of bringing tension to release the tension so that the muscle helps to stop and to deactivate or to stop looking for traction. So let's stay for this last 2 breaths or so. Concluding this pose with a nice big exhale, If your chin has been down into your chest, I'm going to invite you to lift and bring it up and out first so that you're neutralizing the neck and spine. And then drop the elbows down to the sides. Feel free to come right back down to the belly. Rest the chin here. Bend the knees if you'd like, and windshield wiper the feet side to side. Breath in through the nose and back out. Lots of windshield wipering. Lots of freeing the front of the hips. Little bit of reset there. And then from here, let's go ahead and lower the legs back down to the mat. And then I'm going to invite you to come over one last time to your back.
Liz,
Finish.
we are actually at time.
On our back, sorry.
We're at time to end the session.
Okay. I'm going to invite you then, as you're finished with that posture, since we are at the conclusion, to just take a minute and reset with your same mindfulness that you started with. I'm sorry, I thought it went all the way till 2. So feel free to make your way back into a seat or onto your back. Allow yourself a little bit of reset. Thank you for coming, for joining, for experiencing something maybe a little different if you hadn't tried something like that before. Feel free to take a breath or two here to reset so you're ready for the rest of your day. And maybe even just offer a little bow here in honor of your body, yourself, and that practice and offering. Thank you. And thanks for letting me know on time. I appreciate it. And once again, thank you for your participation. If you have a second, want to put any questions in here or anything else, I'd be happy to help or answer anything or whatever you might need as you're transitioning. Oh, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Thank you, Augusta. Thanks for showing up. Take care. All right. I think that means I'm just going to sign us all off. Take care. Okay.